Live from the Icebox Studio in Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania, it's the Bill and Corey Show.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Corey.
Yeah, welcome back. This is kind of like our Christmas episode because we're going to be, the next 2 weeks will be best ofs.
Oh,
so,
I didn't wear my Christmas tie on. I didn't get the memo.
I got that. No, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't send you that one. This is always, we have a little teleprompter here, and it's always really for the questions and a couple like technical details if we need to have that. But the first one, it just says Corey question, because whenever I see Corey question, I know it's going to be fun because the question is just too long to put on the teleprompter.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of whines, and it's got its own life.
Yes. So I had a gentleman call me that was having, flow problems with our regulator. Well, first thing he wanted to do was the regulator that he had was inlet on this side, outlet on this side.
That's his old regulator.
That's what I said, old regulator.
Okay,
yeah, the old regulator he had was running the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And he liked that because that's the way they're running it. He could see the gauges and he could do that. So he wanted to make his regulator also that way. One idea that he had was he wanted to turn the gauges around so you could see the gauges, but you'd have to reach around the back to do it. That's one possible solution.
Yeah.
And I might add that this is a two-stage regulator. So the high points and the low points are important. A single-stage regulator, you can flip it, put them on the back because they have 3 low ports and 3 high ports. But the interstage regulator, or the two-stage regulator, has an interstage port that you can't put another gauge in because it's just going to read the interstage pressure.
Yeah. You could put one in there.
You could put one in there.
Hey, it's reading 350.
Yes. Yeah, so one thing that actually popped in my head that I thought was a pretty good idea, and I want to share with you guys here, is, it's nice. The main gauge is the delivery pressure. That's the one you most care about. Yeah, we want to know how much is left in your cylinder, but you're not checking that. It's this gauge. So what you can do.
Now our regulators, our pipe thread is a little bit tighter. You can't.
Oh yeah. These are regulators that we don't. And where's my little tool?
Your little tool here. No, this plug.
Oh yeah.
That one's loose.
No,
You wouldn't be able to get the other one out.
Oh, but this is interstage. You unloosened the wrong one.
Oh, did I unloosen the wrong one?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Well, then why'd you tell me to go to that one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, of course, we can do this for you.
Yes.
That's probably the best way to do it.
Modified regulator, and we'll figure out how to describe this. But you can put like that. Your inlet gauge from your cylinder is right down here. You can still read it. It's just a little bit annoying, but it's it's a big gauge. You don't have to look at it.
It's empty, full.
Yeah, it tells you it's empty, it's full. This is the delivery gauge that is really important. You want to see what your delivery pressure is. So in this case, you get the right side up view of your delivery gauge, and you just have to worry about the small, and you get your let's see here, what am I looking at? Left to right. Now, and more has, so the guy was also having some flow problems. And I want to add this, that this is just, do not do this.
Yeah, well, he was talking about loosening a nut.
Loosening a nut, and he called it the 2-inch nut. And I didn't realize he was talking about the bonnet.
The bonnet, the nut's about a 2-inch
nut. So he's talking about the bonnet. So he took the bonnet
Once again,
out.
you're going to need a really big wrench to loosen it.
Yeah. This is not, I am strong. I'm strong, but I'm not this strong. And so he took it off, and he said, wow, the diaphragm has got some weird ridges in it. So he poked it. Don't poke it. And then, of course, so one of the huge problems here is that we're not going to reuse this regulator. Right now, I have no idea what particulates have gotten on this just by being out in the air right now. Yeah. So he put it back on, and then then the regulator, he tried it again, and it was leaking through the bonnet. And so it could be because of particulate, it could be because of anything. It's really hard to take this off with the diaphragm staying in there perfectly and not being able to do anything. So definitely don't do that. It does have ridges on it. It does have, that's part of the design. The guy thought it was something interesting. And then he also asked about the holes in here. And so I just want to add the holes because we get asked about this sometime, but there's these little holes, and he was concerned why there's a hole. And so these are weep holes.
Well, it was on the
nut.
It
was on the nut, yeah. You want to do the zoom in? So he's concerned about this hole in the nut. He's also concerned about that hole, which I told him was a bonnet vent hole, which it'll leak gas out if it gets past the diaphragm. And this is a little weep hole, and this hole is for
that's when you
tighten it down. Air doesn't get trapped in, and somehow push like you could create a pressure.
Yeah, because it's a threaded connection, and you get really high torque. You're talking like 75 foot-pounds of
Yeah.
torque on there, a big wrench, and you have problems sealing if you get air trapped in there and you're kind of compressed. There's all sorts of stuff happens. So they have a little bleed hole.
Little weep hole, but
to
don't shed a
bleed
tear.
out. Yeah, don't.
Oh, I should probably put the rest of this on, huh?
Nah, just leave.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
You go.
Yeah, put it back together. Oh, probably the big problem when you're taking it apart is you could mess up the diaphragm, and once you mess up it is.
Yeah. I mean, it is.
flexible
Yeah,
metal.
it's this flexible, thin piece of metal. It's still, you know.
Or you can put the button on the wrong way, but that's fine.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I was just.
And it's
I
funny
was just
to
actually
think-
doing that right now because I was looking at this. I was like, which way does it go?
Exactly.
Intuitively, I would say
So
this
if you
way.
put it on the
but
wrong
has a little
way,
dot.
it's gonna screw up the regulator.
Yeah, and then you're not going to get proper pressure readings or leaks
Yeah,
of some
yeah.
sort. And,
I know from experience.
yes,
Okay, so I think we kind of beat that question to death.
we beat it to death.
Okay, here's another. This one's this question might take the rest of the show.
Uh-oh.
Okay, someone got a switch over. We sold someone a switch over. And this
It's
one's
rare.
pretty-
It happens every once in a
Yeah,
while.
no, we sell a lot of them. But we get special switchovers. So this is not the special switchover. This is just one we happen to have laying around. So they wanted to have a liquid dewar on this side and a high pressure cylinder on this side. So this side, they had indicating pressure switches. So they wanted to have typically we do a 0 to 4,000 for the cylinder because it's
And these IPS
Good
switches go to an alarm system.
go to alarm system, right? Indicating pressure switch, go to alarm system, tell you when you're empty. Or, yeah, when the cylinder or
Cylinder's
doer's low. So he wanted 600 PSI on here, and he was a little confused. Well, they were confused by the warning labels because we had a 500 PSI warning label on the hose for the doer side. And the customer said, and 3,000 on this side, because that's for the cylinder. And the customer was a little confused about that and said, oh, my dewar is a 600 PSI dewar and my cylinder's 3,000 PSI. Is this going to be a problem? And, well, you want to pop up the first graphic? Now, there's the gauge on the dewar. That says 600 PSI on there. And so he's probably thinking that's the highest pressure it's going to be.
Yep.
But it's with dewars, dewar,
Even with cylinders as well.
you don't have gauges on cylinders.
Oh yeah, you don't have gauges on cylinders.
So, but,
I didn't realize.
so
this
you've
was-
got, for dewars, they have a relief valve on there. And it's the,
Off
this
gas.
is the 350, it's the off gas
Yeah.
because it's you get cryogenic liquid in there, it's going to boil off. It's a big thermos bottle. You want to keep it, it's a big thermos bottle.
It is. It is.
And then you want to, occasionally gas has to get vented off. So these are special relief valves that will relief and reset. So we would call this a 350 PSI dewar because that's the highest pressure you're going to achieve in there. So there's most of the dewars you use are going to be 230 PSI or 350 PSI. And there are some 500 PSI dewars, they're like laser sills or something for their big, huge things, big flow rate. Now, we're talking about the 3,000 PSI, they're concerned about that. So it's like, we call the cylinders 3,000 PSI cylinders, but they're not filled to 3,000 PSI.
No, it's just
That's the rating for the
It's like the nominal
CGH.
diameters that we have, where we call it 2 inches and it's 2, and it's all. You
Yeah,
know.
but they're called 3,000
Yeah.
PSI cylinders. And that's, when they're filled at room temperature, it's going to be lower than that. So on a really hot day, it might, 120 degree day, it might get up close to 3,000. That's the whole ideal gas long stuff. Now you want to...
What's the ideal? No.
You want to pop up the next graphic? So this is a cylinder stamping, and we'll get back to it later too. But that has it's ICC 3AA 2015. So this cylinder is rated for 2015 for gases. And then that's the base rating for it. So you want to go to the next one. Okay, this one is 2265 I don't know why they have 2265, but that's just what some are rated for different pressure. We would still call this a 3,000 psi cylinder, but that's the fill pressure. And then I'm going to pop on the last one that's a DOT 3AA 2400. So that's filled to 2400 psi. So you're going to get, so your cylinders you're going to get are going to be between 2,000 and I'm going to say 2640. I'll explain that a little bit later. Of gas. They're not going to be, that's at room temperature. Now if you have it, like I said, 120 degree day, your gas might get close to 3,000 psi just because you got the whole ideal gas log. When the hotter it gets, the higher pressure it gets.
You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know why, but like when people connect these to, connect the regulator to their cylinder and it shows only 2,300 psi in there, do they feel like they got ripped? Like how?
You know, some people do. So, you can get it, and there's other limitations for filling gases. Yeah, and there's also, you got to keep in mind the gauges are, if you have the gauge on there, it's going to be, could be plus or minus 100 psi to start with.
That's
and
true.
It's supposed to get 2,400, it says 2,300. Well, you know, your gauge is
within range, though.
Yeah. Now, we'll teach you some more stuff about cylinders. You want to put up the next graphic? That is the retest state on there.
Hieroglyphics, it looks like.
It is kind of hieroglyphics. Now, the 922 is the last, and the cylinders get retested.
Which is a good thing.
There's a schedule. Yeah, it's good to make sure they're good. Because you
For my paintballing back in the day, I used to have a cylinder, had to get retested every 5 years.
Yes, and that's your typical retest state is 5-year retest. So and they're typically hydrostatically tested, and the whole procedures for that. So this was tested in 922. I think the 6998 has to do with who tested it. It's either like the company or some. That's the hieroglyphic part of it. And then you got the.
Well, that's the hieroglyphic part.
Well, that's simple. That's a plus.
It's an upside down T.
It's a plus. It's just hard. You have a square stamp on a curved cylinder.
I know.
And you're stamping metal. So. That plus means you can fill it 10% overfill on the cylinder for gases that aren't flammable and aren't corrosive. So that would be really your inert gases, nitrogen, helium, argon, air. So you could fill your 2,400 psi, 10% would be 240 psi, would be 2,640 psi for your 2,400 psi.
There you go.
But that's not too much math. Now the star, and this is all dependent upon how well it does in hydro test. And the star means that it got a 10-year retest date. So you can wait 10 years to retest it. Now what that means, this is DOT regulations. And what this means is your cylinder has to be filled before the test date.
Yes.
So if this cylinder, It was filled before the test date.
What is it? September of
2022. Yeah.
No. Well, 1010 was the last one.
1010. Yeah. So if you filled it in September 2020, that's fine. You don't have to retest it until it gets empty
and refilled again.
Yeah. It has to do with the refill. So you can't fill a cylinder that's after the retest date.
But you don't have to get rid of a cylinder that goes past the retest date if it has stuff in it. If it has,
right.
If it has
you don't
gas
have to
still
get
in
rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to make that clear.
Now, let's pop up the last slide. It's kind of interesting. This is a cylinder that we had here. That's 947. That's the original hydrostatic. That's the original test date of the cylinder.
You didn't show me this picture.
So that was a long time. That was before I was born. So that's a long time ago. So
it's 82. I thought there was a 32 down there, but I think it's an 82.
That's an 82. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's got to be an 82.
Wow.
So
and we're still using it?
It's still good.
Wow. I mean, if you keep things up and take care of them, paint them, keep them out of the elements.
Yeah, I tried to look, and the longest the cylinder's been in service.
Now would the valve probably have been replaced in this?
Oh, yeah.
Do they ever on cylinders let you know when a valve's, or do they just do it as needed?
What happens is when you retest it, you have to devalve the cylinder.
Okay.
So you take the valve out, and then I'm not an expert on that.
Okay.
So they're gonna I'm sure there's some kind of inspection they do.
Okay.
And I might say, it's time to replace it.
Because that'd be even more amazing if the same.
Yeah, that would
was
be.
still on the
I don't know
cylinder.
about that. Threads are going to be pretty worn out and stuff. So yeah. So the valves get replaced, and then they have a lot of times they'll have scrap barrel.
And it's nice to know we're not just throwing cylinders out that are old.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know, that's recycling right
the
there.
important thing is there's nothing wrong with being old, as long as as long as it.
Well, you go from old to classic. There's that period between, you know.
Okay, it's just old. So if you notice on one of the earlier slides, it said ICC on there.
Yeah,
and
that's
the other one said
confusing me.
DOT. That old cylinder at ICC, because it was the Interstate Commerce Commission used to be in charge of cylinder safety stuff, and that's been replaced by the Department of Transportation. So it's
Either name works though. I kind of want to go
well,
research.
the ICC is gone. That was gotten rid
No,
of.
but I mean, why did they just not call just change the ICC? I don't know.
Well, the ICC was abolished in 1995. So
Oh, okay. All right, just some interesting, bureaucratic history.
okay. Well, that's there's a third question I thought was kind of interesting, but I guess we're not going. I really don't think. we have time
And
for
Bill's
that one.
policy, no questions.
Yeah, I just want to.
It's going to be a mystery question
I don't want to
forever.
have you here all day.
Forever.
Forever. So it's not. So you can. The next 2 weeks will be best of episodes, and then back in January we'll have a brand new live episode, and all fresh for the
With
new
Baby
year.
New Year.
Baby New Year episode. Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's the old, the old. What's those people that made the Rudolph cartoons? What are those guys called? The stop motion?
Merchandisers.
No, they're very famous people, and I'm forgetting them.
Okay,
right now,
that's
and
not-
I'm
okay.
upset about that.
He'll research that for their next
No,
show.
well, no.
Oh, thanks for tuning in. That's all we have this week for the Bill and Corey Show. Tune in again next week.
Set your VCRs.